Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome CEO of GE Digital and Chief Digital Officer of GE, Bill Rue.
I'm really stoked to be here. We had about 3,700, 3,800 people sign up, almost 90% more attendees than last year, which is pretty exciting. But if you look, what really gets me excited about this conference, from when we started with our first conference 6 years ago, the 150, which was more, I'd say, media-oriented, this conference has become a conference for practitioners in becoming digital industrial. It represents all of the industries. It's a global conference. And if you start to think about who you are and what this is about, it's about sharing experiences as the leaders, the 13%, who are on the journey today and are going to lead everybody else into this digital industrial future. That's what we're about. And when I think about this conference, this year's theme, last year's theme was really about the portfolio, the predicts-powered portfolio. This year, it's about customers and it's about outcomes. It's about what does it take to combine OT and IT together and become more digital. It's about driving outcomes and being able to compete. And I think these quotes from companies who are in the mining space and steel production space capture why we're doing this. And one of the things at this conference that you're going to see is a ton about customers. We started with customers, the first digital utility. We're going to, throughout, integrate customers into almost everything we talk about and really describe outcomes. And I'm really proud about what we've been able to achieve together over the last 20 months when we first released our predicts-powered portfolio. And the question is then, why are we doing this as a community? And the World Economic Forum last year put out a really powerful report on digital transformation, which talked about this $6.8 trillion opportunity over the next 10 years. That's a huge prize. And the winners are going to be the ones who, in fact, go after that and go through the digital transformation. I was particularly happy to see that they actually called out that of the 6.8 trillion, 700 billion is going to be APM driven. And as a leader in APM, we are really happy to see that is being recognized as one of the key value drivers going forward, as well as service automation and the platform capabilities. So this is the prize everyone is chasing. The question is, what are we all learning about how to get there? And we're starting to see patterns appear. When I started working on this 6 years ago, inside GE, there was a question of why are we doing it? About 4 years ago, as we started exploring with our own customer base, the question was, why are you doing this? That was the only question we ever really got asked. About 2.5 years ago, that question turned to, how are you doing this? And I have to say, and I think for you who are in the audience, you're really saying, what am I going to do about it? And what we're seeing is these patterns appear, and I think you can explore how you do that at the conference. The first thing that we see people do is they are able to gain mastery of their assets. And that's really a starting point and if you don't start there, it's impossible really to make the move through these other phases. But what we see is you start with the mastery of your asset, you connect your assets, you connect your systems of assets, you bring that data in, and you start driving outcomes and productivity. But that's not enough. What we're seeing and hearing, and you'll see it in the report we put out, is that people are interested in their operations and how they gain more mastery of the operation, and brings people into this in a new way. It looks at your fleet. It starts to think about integrating your entire ecosystem and systems together. But what's really fascinating is that what we're hearing at the C-suite now is the ultimate prize is business transformation, new business models, business innovation. And so it's really master the asset, master the operations, and begin to move into business innovation. And you heard a lot of that from Gil this morning, and the NIPA story, he talked about every single one of these as being a digital utility. Now, when you think about it, we believe that underpinning this is a series of technologies that are necessary to make that shift. That is, to us, this Predix-powered portfolio. And for us, Predix starts with the common asset model, because if you have at the cornerstone mastery of your asset data, you can begin to drive these kinds of new outcomes. You can drive outcomes through asset performance management, where you start to get reliability and predictability and greater efficiency out of your machines. You can then start to think about how to drive that into your people and make them more productive. Allow them to, in fact, start to focus on the hard work and less of the mundane. Underlying that is a platform architecture that goes edge to cloud. The idea of being at the edge is so important in the industrial world, and that the ability to make that connection is really very unique and very powerful. So for us, it all starts with the asset model and then the ability to bring all of this together. One thing, when we talked about focus, and John talked about how we are focusing in terms of how we go to market and working with partners, you heard that partner ecosystem, I think, come across very clearly. And one thing we found is even within the platform ourselves, we're going to partner more than ever before. We're already doing that. You see that with the movement into utilizing the cloud architectures, Azure being released on the 30th of November. This, to us, is an important part of moving and focusing and creating an ecosystem. And when you look at this ecosystem, it's not one or two, it's a whole bunch. It's Microsoft Azure in the cloud. It's HP Enterprise at the edge. We actually think there'll be more processing on the edge than in the cloud over time because of the real-time nature of the businesses we're in, because our fleets move around, because connectivity is not always as perfect as we would like everywhere in the world. And then finally, it's the announcement we made with Apple, where we know that mobility is important, and our ability to natively bring in iOS applications on top of Predix through our SDK is allowing us to create very quickly these mobile applications. So for us, you're going to continue to see partnering with leaders in our platforms and our applications to get us there faster, creating that ecosystem. And then we add value on top of that ecosystem. We leverage that compute. We leverage that machine learning stack that's being created. We're not going to get into those areas. We're going to utilize what others are doing. But what we're doing is adding unique data, domain expertise, and bringing it together into an industrial setting. So the ability to operate at the edge and connect your control systems is a domain expertise that's required. And by the way, I think this is what we offer you, is to be part of your ecosystem, to connect with that same capability. And you add your own domain expertise, you connect into ours, connecting into these powerful capabilities from these partners. When you think about the machine learning capability, then the question is, well, Bill, if you're just using their machine learning stack, what are you adding? And the reality is that these tools are great, but given the complexity of problems in the industrial world, they're not enough. And I'll give you just one quick example here, is in our oil and gas business, they are really fantastic at monitoring pipelines and looking for defects. They monitor about a million kilometers of pipeline, which is an incredible number to me. They have about 350 experts. It takes them about 2 years to train that expert to be able to act alone in doing this monitoring. And they've found about 100 million defects over 15 years. When you look at the amount of data and finding a defect, what's incredible is one defect is the equivalent of one blade of grass on 7 football fields. So you can see that these kind of problems, and you in the industrial space, you understand this, are more complex than just a general purpose machine learning. You have to use those tools to help them find those defects, but the reality is you've got to put a lot of expertise on top of them, and that's what we do, that's what we are doing. We're adding this idea of an ultrasonic pig AI solution on top of them. And by the way, one thing I've learned from our AI experts is people are not going away. We're going to make them better, we're going to make them more efficient, we're going to be able to do more work, but the fact is people are not going away. Look, I think kind of concluding with just a few things, this is really about outcomes at this conference. And you know, in the last 20 months, people are always saying, where are the real outcomes, Bill, you're generating? What are you really doing? And the fact is, we have a tremendous number of outcomes, and we're measuring those outcomes. So we're not selling technology, we're selling the ability for customers to achieve an outcome in unplanned outages, in productivity savings, in reduction in service failures. And these are just a few numbers that I'm showing here. But I'm telling you, there are hundreds of these stories that exist here today. And we really measure ourselves on the outcomes we're generating. The last thing is we are really proud of the success we've had over the last 20 months. When you look at between the acquisitions we've made and the sales and working with our customer base, today there are about 1,000 Predix-powered customers on our portfolio, and we're very proud of that. When you start to look at the power business, who's done a tremendous amount in this area, about 10% of the world's power generation is now running through a Predix-powered application. We have about 300,000 technicians globally who are on ServiceMax, 2,200 production sites who are using our APM solution, about 120 million assets connected in ServiceMax that people are using in their jobs on a daily basis. We are nearly 1,000 partners, about 100% year-over-year growth in Predix-powered orders, and we're operating in 85 countries. We are really feel after 20 months we're starting to hit our stride, very happy with the progress we made. But I will just say the most important thing is those outcomes I mentioned. That's what we measure ourselves on. You're going to see that at the conference. As I started, I'm really stoked to have you here. And now I'd like to bring Russell Stokes to the stage to talk about the electricity value chain. Thank you very much and enjoy the conference.